if you had to choose one skill or habit, what would it be for high school students to start practicing from now that would benefit them in the future?
Ooh, that's a really good question. If I had to pick one, I would probably say always be curious. Really be curious about the product in your field. I work at Microsoft, we build software. I'm continuously curious about, our products, what they're being used for. If someone is working in, let's say, the medical field and they're building like a new syringe or like a medical device, like really be curious, like who is this used for? What is the benefits and how much is it being sold for? Like what is it made out of? Whether you're in sales or you're in engineering, it's going to help you do your job and like understand, the why behind it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the podcast, Thinking Ahead with Sourya. Today, our guest is Mike McLean, Principal Group Product Manager at Microsoft. Mike has spent 20 years working on major products like Teams, Viva, Excel, and SharePoint. He's led global teams, built features used by millions, and loves solving big tech challenges. I'm really excited to have him here. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you. Really happy to be here.
Yep. So my first question for you is, to start us off, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, who are you and what do you do at Microsoft?
Yeah, no, that's great. So my name is Mike McLean. And like you said, I'm a principal group product manager. I've been at Microsoft 20 years and really spent most of my time in the product space. So that means I've helped define what we build into our products, really try to identify what our customers need, and what scenarios we want to deliver to help run their businesses more successfully. So I worked on a variety of products, everything from building charts and dashboards and analytics, to really high scale like project management. You can think of let's say a company wants to construct a new skyscraper in New York City or build a new airplane. They need to be able to manage all that work and get all that done. Then I moved over into like the collaboration space where I worked a bit on Microsoft Teams. And lately I've been focused on a product called Viva Engage. And that's really to help employees communicate across their organization and help leaders communicate down to their employees as well. So it's been a real exciting journey.
That's really cool. So what does like a typical day in your job look like?
Yeah, I think it might sound cliche. I mean, every day is different in the
Mm,
product space. But I, will usually wake up. I drive into work, so I actually go to work in person. 4 or 5 days a week. I'm really lucky at Microsoft. We have a really fantastic site here in Redmond, just right outside of Seattle. So we've got a great set of folks. Where people from all product teams come together. And I'll go in, and that's usually how I start my day. For me, it's super exciting to be surrounded by a great group of
mm.
technologists. Who are all learning about new technologies and just try to build exciting products. So I'll go in and then I usually catch up with folks on my team and the areas that they're driving. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about any pressing customer issues that we have to solve, things aren't working right, or any new features that we're shipping, into our apps.
Mm.
And then, depending on the day, we might have like an executive briefing where perhaps we have to update our leadership on decisions that we're making. And very frequently, we'll decide as a team, all right, do we really want to make this change? Do we want to, push out more notifications through our apps? Do we want to ship this new scenario? Do we want to add, images or something like that? And then we'll usually just continue by possibly meeting with customers. In the afternoon, might have a call or two, which is great. That's always a highlight of my day. And then usually wrap up at the end and head home. So yeah, that's kind of my day in a nutshell.
It's really cool. Could you tell me a little bit more? I don't think I caught the name, but there was that one project you said you were working on recently. Oh, could you just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. The product called Viva Engage that I mentioned.
Mm.
Yeah, actually, it's pretty exciting when you think about companies. Frequently, they can have hundreds of thousands of employees. Some of these consulting firms are quite large and they're spread across the globe. They have employees in the United States, Asia, et cetera.
Right.
And so our product lets employees create communities, and these could be work related. Like you might have all of the
Mm.
doctors that work on the East Coast of US, or they could be non-work related. So you could
Right.
have everyone who loves dogs or foodies or something. And it lets employees kind of come together and identify and share these common interests, which is pretty exciting. And at the same time, leaders, who are leading these companies, they can also post and communicate. And so it's kind of creates a social network inside of your company. And so it's great. I mean, it's used by tens of millions of employees around the world, and it's just been a really fantastic product to work on.
That's great. So it's essentially like, a messaging platform that could be used for anything to connect people throughout an organization.
Pretty much, yeah, yeah. And actually, we've been incorporating more AI quite heavily in terms of identifying themes that people are discussing, what's
Right.
trending, how do you want to tag different conversations. And so an example would be, at Microsoft, we every year run something called the Giving Campaign, where employees can donate to causes. And that's one thing we try to push at Microsoft, is to really give back and be very philanthropic. And so with our product, we can actually create almost like a hashtag that's a campaign. So if I
Mm.
share something internally, hey, I donated to Seattle Children's Hospital, I can tag that, and then now other people can see that, and it kind of builds some momentum. So yeah, so that's basically what it's used for.
That's great. So I think you mentioned that, when you go to work, you had that call with the customers and you said that was the highlight of your day. So is that really like, is that the most exciting part of your job that makes you think, can't wait to get to work today?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is. I think talking to customers, whether it's in person, on Teams, et cetera, and learning about the big challenges we're helping them solve with our technology is probably the highlight of my job. This week, actually, Microsoft is hosting a conference called Microsoft Ignite, and it's in San Francisco. And so we have folks from our team that flew down there, and they're hosting sessions where they're talking about our product. And we have customers attending there in person. We have customers meeting with us virtually. And it's interesting because they have all kinds of different challenges that they're trying to solve. And a lot of these customers are moving off of old technologies to new technologies.
Mm.
Perhaps their company's growing, they're hiring more employees. Maybe their company bought another company, or they're merging. And so just learning about all these great opportunities, and just seeing like the impact that our products have around the world is what keeps me going.
Right. So you really just get to see the direct impact of your work every day.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I mean, I know Microsoft is a household name, and people have their ups and downs with our products sometimes, but at the end of the day, when you look at solving like you know
Hmm.
real big problems at scale, I mean, this is the place to do it.
So a lot of us, like you just said, I mean, we all use like Microsoft Teams and stuff like Planner. I know my dad probably uses both of those.
Yeah.
For school projects, organizing clubs, just talking with my friends. Like, what's it like being a part of building these products? I think you kind of already touched up on it, but is there anything else that like, you think you'd want to like share?
Yeah, yeah, building these products is really fascinating. I mean, when you think about, yeah, any app, let's take like Spotify, for example, right? Someone has to decide, all right, how are we going to sort this song list, right? Or, what algorithm are we going to use to show you music that's trending? Or, how are we going to build out Spotify Wrapped, and deliver that? What day, what time? And, one thing that I think that's really fascinating is the amount of data that's available to us now.
Hmm.
When I look back 20 years ago, we performed a lot of customer research where we'd pull people in and we'd interview them, and we'd sit down there in person, or maybe we'd put them in a lab and watch them use the product. Nowadays, we can look at the data and like partner very closely with data scientists, applied scientists, and say, oh, okay, well, it looks like if we make this change, or we, push out this email tomorrow instead of today, like we're likely to get,
Hmm.
more engagement, or the customers will be more satisfied.
And you said this comes from like, working with data scientists or research companies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think our field has changed quite a bit. I mean, years ago we focused really heavily on the product manager and the engineer, and maybe somebody who was testing the product, and now we've got so many more disciplines involved. So, when people are coming out of high school and thinking, oh, what career should I go into? Well, you don't have to, be the person who's learning how to code to build these products.
Hmm.
Like, you can go and you can become a data scientist, you can learn statistics, right? You can study psychology and become a user researcher. And so there's a lot of different career opportunities available.
I think that's a really big thing, especially for me, because I've always wanted to work. I love like data science and research, and actually, putting that to use is the part that I love. But the background work, the coding and all of that, it never really, seemed like something that I wanted to do. So I think that's really cool that you can still do what you love without having to do that work specifically.
Yeah, and I think it always helps to understand. how that job is performed. So understand the basics of, all right,
Mm,
here's generally how you write code, here's how
right.
you test it, here's how you push it to production. But yeah, I agree that that field of really understanding and interpreting like how the products are being used is fascinating, and I see a big uptake in that area for sure.
Okay. So now I want to talk about something a little more applicable to, people my age group right now. So when you were in high school, is your career aligned with what you expected that you were going to be in at this point? So is there anything you did to like get here, or did you have a complete 180?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I laugh because I feel like if me in high school was put up against all of you today, I would fail miserably. I think I think
Nah.
all of you, I mean the youth today are just so motivated and in touch with what's happening around you. And there's so much more information at your
Right.
fingertips. I think, when I was in high school, yeah, I was kind of exposed to some careers here and there, but I definitely didn't even know about this field when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I had thoughts of maybe I'll go into some type of engineering. That's what my dad did. I also thought maybe I'd become a pediatrician. Medical field was kind of interesting. And obviously, I did neither of those. My dad was a civil engineer. I didn't go into that field either. And so it actually wasn't until I started college that I learned about this field and kind of transitioned into building products.
So that's cool. Is there anything you did in high school that really helped you now, even if it wasn't directly about this specific career that you're in?
Yeah, I think, when I was in high school, I was involved with a variety of activities. Yeah, I love playing music, so that was one great thing. I played percussion, some, drums and marimba and xylophone and things like that, with the school band. And I also worked a part-time job, and I think doing all of those different sorts of activities helped me learn how to like balance my time
Mm-hmm.
because I think once you get into college and then you get into your career,
It becomes really important.
it becomes really important. Yeah, yeah. And so I just kind of going through that motion of like having a part-time job, having school, having some extracurricular activities, and then having like that social network kind of helped set me on that path through college and then the professional career.
I think that sounds a lot like me right now. I mean,
Yeah,
just love to play music, and that's all I know right now. Just learning how to manage my time is probably the biggest focus this year.
yeah, yeah. Nope, that's good.
So, and then I think my last question is every career has its challenges. So every day you go to work, and I'm sure it doesn't always work out the way you planned. So what are some of these challenges that you faced recently, and how did you tackle them?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think in my career, I mean, there's always going to be challenges, and there's going to be things that you can predict, and some things that you can't predict. I mean, when I look back and when I started my career, I'm gonna date myself, but like I graduated in the middle of the dot-com boom, in the early
Mm-hmm.
2000s. And so when I was going to college, everything was great. People were getting jobs. It was awesome. Everybody was building websites, getting into e-commerce. By the time I graduated, it was actually really tough, right? Because the market had
Mm-hmm.
turned. I mean, that was a bit out of my control. I was just graduating at the time, but I kind of looked at it as well. I have to do as much as I can that's in my control, and evaluated a couple of job offers I had, and I made the decision to actually move out of state to take my first job. And so I did that. Luckily things worked out great. Yeah, sometimes those challenges are in your control, sometimes they're not, and you just have to kind of focus on the changes that you can make. And that happened a couple more times through my career. Once where I had an opportunity to move to Microsoft headquarters here and work in Redmond,
Mm-hmm.
and so I actually ran through like a pros and cons list of like, hey, I have this opportunity here, I have this one here. There's a lot of different dimensions, and at that point I had gotten married, had a couple of kids, and so I tried to kind of follow a framework to make those
Right.
decisions and then make the best call. And really in life you just have to make the best decision you can with the information you have. And sometimes, making a decision is better than not making one. So, it's kind of moving forward through those.
So I
But
think
yeah,
that's really good advice also for just high school students in general. It's like, focus on the things that you can control. Like don't waste time worrying about the things you can't. Just have a good framework when you're making decisions.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes it just comes down to like you're going to make a list of those things that you have to do, and if it doesn't look like everything's going to fit, then that's when the priorities come into place, right? It's like,
Right.
okay, I've got this assignment that's due tomorrow, and this one that's due 3 days. I got to do this. This one's worth more points. You know how it is.
Yeah. Uh, so my final question is like what's specifically if you had to choose one skill or habit, what would it be for high school students to start practicing from now that would benefit them in the future?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I mean, there's all the easy ones, right? Like,
Mhm.
note taking or, all that kind of stuff. But like if I had to pick one, I would probably say always be curious.
Mhm.
That's probably the one. And to expand on that, I'll cheat a little bit because I'll explain it in like three different ways. One is probably really be curious about the product in your field. So, I work at Microsoft, we build software. I'm continuously curious about, our products, what they're being used for, right? If someone is working in, let's say, the medical field, right, and they're building like a new syringe or like a medical device, like really be curious, like who is this used for? And like what is the benefits and like how much is it being sold for? And like what is it made out of, right? And
Right.
whether you're in sales or you're in engineering, it's going to help you do your job and like understand, the why behind it, right? And
Right.
so I think that's the first. And so be curious about like these are really three P's, like the product and then the process, right? So like, how is this being made, or how is this being done? Like if I'm at school, like okay, like how are we reaching this decision? Is there a faster way to do it? Is this the most effective way? Like, do we have the right people involved, right? So
Mhm.
be curious about the product and the process. And then I think really the third would be the people. And really you're doing this right now by hosting this podcast. I mean, if you be curious about people and really
Right.
understand like, hey, what drives them, and like how are you doing today, and how are you feeling? Like that's how you build that
Mhm.
connection and that network. And that's probably the most important thing is being successful is you know, knowing people and building that network out, you know. Yeah.
All right, so that was it. Thank you so much, Mike. It was really great talking with you and learning about your journey.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it was awesome talking to you too. And congrats on the podcast. I think this is a fantastic idea.